Good evening. I'd like to call the order the Woodland Park Planning Commission for Thursday, October 12th. It's 6:30. Have roll call, please.
Chairman Hartsfield,
Here.
Vice Chair Lee Brown,
Here.
Don DeZellem,
Here.
George Jones,
Here.
Ken Kennedy,
Here.
Larry Larson,
Here.
and Sean Nielsen. Here.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have two sets of minutes to approve this evening. First one from July 13th and one from September 14th. Any comments on the July 13th minutes? Corrections?
Okay, has the name been sorted out? Chip Hoag or Hoag? On page 2. It's highlighted in yellow, like apparently it was uncertain.
I think when staff member was doing that, she was just wondering about the spelling, so.
And nothing's. Okay, we should take the yellow out then
Okay,
and call it right.
we'll do that.
The other question actually about when they have a longer discussion, adding in red time references, I guess, to the video meeting. Is that what those are intended to be? Page 4. I'm not sure it's a bad idea. I don't think we routinely did it.
Which set of minutes are you looking at?
This is the July 13th.
I got the right ones, the top of page 4. He presented information concerning, et cetera, et cetera. It adds in look like time references.
And you may not be looking at the version we want. Did you two?
This is what was we got on a week ago with the package sent out.
And again, you may not be looking at the version we really wanted you to.
Okay.
That you have one that's probably a little bit more of a work in progress.
It's not necessarily a bad idea to have those time references. I don't know what people think about it.
Yeah.
It's if somebody wants to look back, it's actually kind of a good idea on when someone has a long presentation. I don't object just noting it, that it was in there in red.
It's consistent with the copy I have on my
Yeah.
files here.
Because we do that occasionally when we're like double checking something. Especially,
If you're not going to do it routinely, then
No.
it's probably better to omit them. So yes.
yeah, no, and we can take those out. Because I think we were double checking something. And what was that item? That was,
That was the Champion Express car wash.
okay. If I remember right, we were double checking some of that information for city council and to help with like where that was in the record. That's where that ended up in there. So my apologies that we didn't scrub that back out with what it came.
With
before
that,
you all.
I'll move that the minutes be approved as presented, subject to the yellow highlighted be removed and the red time references on the top of page 4 being removed.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Very good. Then we can move on to the September 14th minutes, which are pretty short. Any questions for clarification?
I'll abstain.
6:35 adjournment. That's a record, right?
It is, to my recollection, yes. All in favor of approval as submitted?
Aye.
Any opposed?
One abstention.
One extension.
2 abstains.
Okay, yes, thank you, Larry. With that, it takes us to public hearings. We have CUP, SPR 2023-03, Les Schwab Tire Center, CUP, SPR, and right-of-way vacation. Request by the applicant to consider a conditional use permit and site review, as well as request to vacate a portion of Midland Avenue between Highway 67 and Burdette Street for a proposed tire Center Store. Subject property is located at northwest corner of Midland Avenue and Highway 67. We have a presentation by staff tonight.
We do.
CJ?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chair. As mentioned, this is a request to consider a conditional use permit and a administrative site plan review, as well as a request to vacate a portion of Midland Avenue between Highway 67 and Burdette Street for a proposed tire store. The slide that you see here is a quick update on where we have been with this project. So the original application was received and scheduled for the August 10th hearing date. Prior to the hearing, staff requested that this meeting be canceled due to the fact that the applicant needed to submit for a right-of-way vacation so that the Planning Commission and the City Council could hear that those two applications concurrently on the same night. The hearing was then scheduled for the September 14th meeting, which did not occur due to the lack of quorum. This was also noticed with a new sign on the property and posted within the Pikes Peak Courier. Mailings were not sent out to the adjoining property owners, and that was staff's oversight. Which brings us to tonight. Again, staff noticed this item in the Pikes Peak Courier, and staff again sent mailings out to adjoining property owners within 150 feet of the subject property, as well as updated the notice sign on the property. The subject property is located off of Highway 67 and Midland Avenue, just south of the existing Tractor Supply. The property is zoned service commercial as seen on the right-hand side of the slide. The subject property is located within the L. Clifford Addition subdivision, which was originally approved by City Council in 2002. The first plat consisted of a total of 3 lots, 2 residential lots and 1 commercial lot. In 2004, Lot 1 of the L. Clifford Addition was rezoned from community commercial to service commercial per ordinance 983, series 2004. In 2014, the L. Clifford Addition filing number 2 was approved by City Council, which subdivided Lot 1 of filing 1 into 2 lots as seen on the current slide. Lot 1 of filing 2 is where Tractor Supply operates, and the subject property is outlined in red, where the applicant is proposing approval of a conditional use permit to allow for a Les Schwab Tire Center. Included within the L. Clifford Addition is Midland Avenue right-of-way, which runs along the southern property line of the subject property from Highway 67 to the west beyond Carlisle Street. Within this right-of-way, a portion of the road has been constructed adjacent to Highway 67, which primarily provides access to the north side of Big D Motorsports. Another portion of Midland Avenue has been constructed from Coraline Street, approximately 200 feet to its eastern terminus. While utilities have been located within this proper portion of the right-of-way, due to the steep grade of the land in between these 2 street stubs, this remaining portion of Midland Avenue is not planned to be constructed. The unconstructed portion of Midland Avenue is outlined in blue on the slide. Lastly, the portion of the right-of-way highlighted in yellow is the portion of the right-of-way that the applicant is proposing to vacate. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit and site plan review to allow for a 6-bay Les Schwab Tire Center building to be constructed on Lot 2 of the L. Clifford Addition filing number 2. Within Chapter 18.9 of the City of Woodland Park Municipal Code, automotive and vehicle repair and maintenance shops is listed as a conditional use permit within the SC zone. The subject property is currently being accessed off of Highway 67 through Midland Avenue. As previously stated, while utilities have been established within the right-of-way, only a small portion of Midland Avenue has been developed as a usable street. Due to the steep grade in the undeveloped portion of the right-of-way, the applicant is proposing a portion of Midland Avenue to be vacated, and a private shared access easement will be established and improved to provide access to this property, as well as the adjacent commercial properties to the south. As seen on the right-hand side of the slide, the subject property, as well as the commercial properties to the south, which are outlined in red, are currently using the same access point. If the applicant's request is approved, the shared access easement will serve all commercial properties as seen on the slide. As stated, the shared access easement is proposed to be private and owned and maintained by the property owners. The current slide is the proposed site plan, which is also attached within the application. As seen here, the applicant is proposing a 10,334 square foot building on the eastern portion of the site. The proposed site plan includes a parking area with a total of 34 parking spaces, which is 12 parking spaces above the city requirement. The preliminary landscape plan points out that the western portion of the property, which is on the left-hand side of your slide, is to remain as it currently exists with mature pine trees in order to create a buffer between the proposed tire center and the existing residential properties to the west and southwest. As you can see on this slide is renderings of the proposed tire center. The building is planned to be a total of 30 feet in height. The proposed building material consists of different colored, primarily concrete mason unit blocks. Staff has found that the proposed building does not have a significant mix of materials and does not meet the Woodland Park architectural design guidelines, as you'll see, which is another condition of approval. Staff reviewed section 18.57 when looking at the conditional use permit portion of the application. The development needs to demonstrate a need at the location proposed. The development should not endanger public health. The proposal shall not injure the surrounding property values, and the applicant needs to be in harmony with the proposed location. The application complies with the provisions on the slide. The development needs to conform to the provisions of city plans, and this does comply. The proposed development shall adhere to city municipal codes, and this may comply. Attached within your staff report was a copy of the city red line comments on the applicant's proposed site plan. Within the attached red line comments, staff has called out specific issues on the site plan, including the location and installation of fire hydrants, adding a proper fence for a buffer for residential areas, and issues related to a proper striping for the new intersection configuration. Per condition of approval number 2, the applicant must submit a final site plan resolving all issues on the attached red line plans. The applicant has submitted an updated version of the site plan, and staff has done a full review on the revisions. The proposed development needs to be built to mitigate on and off-site traffic generated, and this also may comply. The applicant did submit a traffic impact analysis within their application. Due to the fact that the proposed development will be accessed off of Colorado State Highway 67, the applicant must submit for and gain approval of an access permit with the Colorado Department of Transportation. This application was also routed to CDOT, and they did submit a comment back, which you will see later on with the conditions of approval. The development needs to be constructed to mitigate drainage and water usage. Provisions 8 and 9 on the slide comply. The proposal cannot increase fire danger, and this may comply. The application was referred to Northeast Teller County Fire Protection District during the referral period. Chief Lambert, which is the chief of the Northeast Teller County Fire Protection District, sent an email to staff on July 18th stating that the applicant must install 2 fire hydrants on the site in order to accommodate the fire protection district. Lastly, as proposed, the building must meet Woodland Park architectural design standards, and this may comply. As I've previously stated, staff found that the building does not contain a significant mix of materials. Staff has added a condition of approval that the applicant shall work with staff to ensure that it meets this provision. Staff also reviewed section 18.34 of the city code when reviewing this application. That full analysis was within your staff report and is very redundant to the criteria we just reviewed. In accordance with the conditional use permit, the applicant is required to submit a preliminary site plan along with other preliminary document plans. As far as process goes, staff makes comments on the preliminary documents during the CUP process, and it gets resolved when the applicant submits for their final site plan, which are essentially construction documents. This process is done administratively through the planning department. This request was also subject to the municipal code, section 12.08, which is vacation of public right-of-ways. The vacation of streets will be considered based on its effect on utilities. This provision may comply. While no adverse effects are expected from granting this vacation, since this vacation includes land that is currently unimproved, due to the existing utilities, the proposed easement must accommodate those. The new easement will need to provide for access and general utilities. The right-of-way vacation shall be subject to the same rules and regulations as the land, and this may comply. If the roadway property line of the city, it may be vacated by a joint action of the city council, and no part of the road shall be vacated to leave any landowners without access. Both of these provisions comply. In the event of vacation of roadways, easements may be reserved for continued use, and this may comply. The approved final plat from lists utilities within the platted right-of-way, and no changes to the listed utilities or existing infrastructure are proposed. These utilities would remain in place if the right-of-way vacation is approved. Additionally, the proposed right-of-way vacation was referred to the staff departments and outside agencies that serve these utilities. The City of Woodland Park Utilities Department commented that the city must retain all easements, and please add a note that all improvements within the easement are the property owner's responsibility. If those improvements are removed in the event of repair or maintenance on the utility, it will be the responsibility of the owner to replace said improvements. This includes concrete, asphalt, fences, etc. The two provisions on the slide comply, which are the applicant must fill out the proper right-of-way request forms, and the Planning Commission and City Council must hear the application with the City Council giving the final determination. Lastly, all three provisions on the slide comply, which are the final determination, if approved, shall be contained within an ordinance and needs to be recorded with the Teller County Clerk's Office, and the applicant needs to pay all fees prior to final approval. The application was referred to the internal and external referral agencies listed here on the screen. Staff received 2 public comments on this application, and both of which were attached within your staff report. Staff's as far as motions go, so we're gonna have 2 motions. So first I'll go over the motion for the CUP SPR portion, and then I'll go over the motion for the right-of-way vacation. So the motion for the CUP SPR is that the Planning Commission recommend to City Council approval of a conditional use permit and site plan review to allow for a proposed Les Schwab Tire Center store within the Service Commercial Zone District, subject to the following conditions. Prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall submit for and receive approval of a final site plan for permitted use, including landscaping, drainage, architectural elevations, etc. Infrastructure zoning development permit, fees in lieu shall be submitted pursuant to municipal code, section 18.33.170. ZDPs and building permits for all new construction, including all civil and construction drawings, final drainage, final landscaping, final site plan, final floor plans and elevations, final grading, sediment and erosion control, final utility plan, final photometric plan, and finally Colorado stormwater permit and stormwater management. Condition number 2, a final updated site plan resolving.
CJ, before we move one, can we agree that when you go back, that the use isn't for a Les Schwab Tire Center? It's for an automotive and vehicle repair or maintenance shop?
And yes. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
you see the reason why,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
As opposed to calling out a specific applicant, yeah. It's
Right.
the use, not the
Okay.
applicant.
Yeah, thank you. Number 2, a final updated site plan resolving all issues identified on the red line plans must be approved by the city before any zoning development permit will be issued. All development impact fees must be paid prior to any zoning development permit issuance, including but not limited to tap fees, stormwater capital improvement fees, transportation capital fees, etc. Fees shall be calculated concurrent with the ZDP review. The applicant must install 2 fire hydrants per the recommendation of the chief of the Northeast Teller County Fire Protection District. The applicant shall amend the proposed building facade to better harmonize with the Woodland Park Mountain Western aesthetic. And lastly, the applicant must submit for and gain approval of an access permit with a striping plan from Colorado Department of Transportation. The recommendation for the right-of-way vacation, that the Planning Commission recommend to City Council approval of the request to vacate a portion of Midland Avenue between Highway 67 and Burdette Street, subject to the following conditions. An easement be established in the vacated area, and the right-of-way vacation exhibit must label the vacated area as access and general utility easement. The applicant must add a note to the right-of-way vacation exhibit that states all improvements within the easement are the property owner's responsibility. If those improvements are removed in the event of a repair or maintenance on the utility, it will be the responsibility of the owner to replace said improvements to include concrete, asphalt, fences, etc. Lastly, number 3, the property owner maintenance agreement must be reviewed and approved by City of Woodland Park prior to recording. Condition number 3 here on the slide is different from what's in your staff report, so I just wanted to call that out. Staff did add a condition number 3, so please mind that when making the motion.
Yeah, can you just tell me a little bit about that? That's an agreement between the applicant and the city?
So that's not an agreement between the applicant and the city, so that would be an agreement with the applicant and the other property owners that would share that access easement. So in the future, if someone were to come by, say, Big D Motorsports, which is just to the south, which uses the same access as Les Schwab, if a transfer of land were to happen, it'd be great to have the city have that document. So if they were to come to us saying, hey, a water line broke, or who plows the snow, things like that. We want to have that document.
Okay, what would be more great would be to have the owners of the 2 adjacent properties participate in this action. Are they?
No, it is an agreement between them establishing this that would then run with the land. We just want to review it prior to it getting recorded.
You know, say this is all the property owner to the north with a larger section, Les Schwab plans to build in, is the only one I've heard from. There's these 2 other properties, Big D Sports, and I'm not sure who the other one is. Are they participating in this before we go through the process of agreeing to a vacation?
Yeah.
Are they signed on to something? Are they?
Yeah,
present here
Commissioner, but so
tonight?
they did sign the right-of-way vacation application.
Okay,
And then Derek Lutz, he's the applicant representative. He's here tonight, and he can kind of talk more about the conversations that he's had with these property owners.
conversations bother me. I'd hate to go through this process
and-
without having a firm commitment.
and
And
he-
you can address that when you speak
sir.
in a few minutes, son.
Yeah.
If you would, I'd appreciate it when you get there. Thank you.
That concludes my presentation, Commissioner. So please let us know if you guys have any questions. Also, as mentioned, Derek Lutz is here representing Les Schwab and the applicant. So please let him know if you guys have any questions as well.
Commissioners, have any questions for staff at this time?
I certainly do. Let's look at page 2 of the staff report if we could.
Do you want me to pull up on the screen, Mr. Larson?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Top of the page. It says at the very first line says included within the L. Clifford edition is Midland Avenue right of way, which runs along the southern boundary of the subject property. When you turn back to page 1, you look at that plat as platted, that right of way is clearly located outside of the proposed platting area. So this right of way is not included within the subdivision. Can you see the distinction between lot 2 and the right of way?
I understand your point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that to your attention that it is currently outside of the subject plat. And next question I had is on page 6. And we talk about the private access agreement on that page. And I share the same comments and concerns that Lee expressed a few minutes ago. How actively involved of the adjacent properties, the vicinity property has been with this particular vacation. It's very important, I think, that the parties agree and propose one voice. You did say that the application has been signed by that, but wanted to make sure that I want to hear what extent they have been involved. Also on that particular page, we talk about the vacation, and we have a copy of that on page 2, showing that 1/2 of the existing right-of-way is being proposed to be vacated, and the other half will remain a right-of-way. Well, a right-of-way of that size is probably not feasible to build a street. I understand that a street probably will not be built there in the future, but at the same time, wouldn't it be prudent to go ahead and vacate the entire right-of-way? That could be absorbed by the adjacent property owners.
As far as the reasons why the applicant proposed to vacate just this portion, I'll let Derek speak on that, Mr. Larson.
Okay. I think what I'll do is let's listen to the applicant's presentation, then I'll ask some of these questions that we can answer that time. Thank you.
Any questions for staff at this time?
Yeah, one more, just it might help me understand the later discussion on what utilities are currently in place within the right of way.
There are fiber telecommunication lines. We have lines from Core Electric and water lines.
Water, no sewer.
And sanitary and.
Yep.
Okay,
There you go.
And
Yes.
and these
basically all of
these serve towards Coraline, or how do they run the entire length from 67 to Coraline, or?
Yeah, so those utility easements do run up the whole right of way vacation up the hillside towards Burdette Street as well.
This is considered with Commissioner Larson's last point too. We're now changing how half of them are handled without the other half. There's at least there's something to think about here. Thank you.
And you kind of jump, with what Lee said, there's a statement also in the staff report talks about that all utilities within this area are private. Well, those sounds like public utilities to me. So that does make a difference, because certainly we need the private access agreement or the utility agreement, continue to maintain that, but it's improper for the city to say that these are private utilities. They are public.
Noted, and I believe some of your concerns are covered with the condition to require a utility easement be established, in the same area. So while the right of way is being vacated, an easement would be established for the presence of all those utilities.
Okay. But that easement will be to serve public utilities as well as some private.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So did you happen to have copies of what the other people have signed that maybe we can review that might help the rest of us understand?
As far as property owners,
Right, and their agreement that they've got with like Schwab and
so and correct me if I'm wrong when you come up here, Derek, no actual access agreement has been signed. What we talked about being signed was the actual right-of-way vacation
Okay.
application that came to the city of Woodland Park.
Mhm.
So since the right-of-way vacation would affect them and their boundary lines, they do have to sign that, which the applicant did get the signatures of Michael Gatt, who is a property owner, as well as Mr. Duncan, who is a property owner both to the south of
Okay.
the proposed Les Schwab.
So the property south of Midland are owned by those two separate entities you mentioned.
Correct, yeah, I can pull it up real quick.
That's fine. Any questions this time? Then I guess we'd invite the applicant to come up and give a presentation or answer questions.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss Woodland Park Les Schwab Tire Center. I'm Derek Lutz. I work for Farnsworth Group. We are the civil engineer for Les Schwab on this project. A little history on Les Schwab. Les Schwab Tires was founded in 1952 in Central Oregon. They currently operate more than 500 stores in 9 western states. They currently have around 25 stores on the Front Range. Front Range has historically been a strong market for Les Schwab, hence the desire to add another location here in Woodland Park. This store would provide 10 to 15 full-time positions. And then into maybe this site specifically, besides just Les Schwab overall. Number one, this is a challenging site to develop with both the topography of the site and the access to CDOT Highway 67. So there's been a lot of discussions with city staff and adjacent property owners, different things to get us to where we are today with this site plan. And maybe the first thing to go over is the potential, or what would have been a potential connection of Midland Avenue up to its terminus up by Coraline. That was one of the first things, even before Farnsworth Group was part of this project. Another firm was trying to lead the charge initially, and were requested to connect Midland Avenue all the way through, which once we came on board, we actually created a plan profile, if we could, to connect all the way through to make it a regular street. And basically the existing grades make it such that a road could not be built to City of Woodland Park criteria or CDOT's criteria due to the change in elevation. So we looked at how do we get an access as far away from Highway 67 as possible, and that was one of the initial comments both from city staff and CDOT. The further you can get an access point into that site, the better. And again, we created another plan profile with change in grade even exceeding what was allowed. We were trying to see what we could do, and basically to get to a point where the access, instead of being on the east side of the building, was on the west side of the building. The cut from existing grade was roughly 20 feet. So would require retaining walls at least 20 feet tall for literally hundreds of feet to build it. And that's when the discussion with city staff of the proposed access that we show currently is what will be moved forward. City doesn't want to maintain that short little stretch. for maintenance purposes, snow removal, all sorts of different reasons. The recommendation came from Ben Schmidt, the city engineer, to vacate that right of way, since this is only essentially, if that's all that gets built, this is just a driveway to the Les Schwab and Big D Motorsports. So that's when we came into the right-of-way vacation process. Initially, we showed the right-of-way vacation simply to roughly 5 feet behind the proposed access point. And the whole time the right-of-way vacation was discussed, it was whatever length of right-of-way is vacated, those exact limits will be a utility easement, and utility and access easement will be dedicated on those exact boundaries. We're not going to be shortchanging the city's access, or both private and public utilities will be able to use that easement. Then a discussion of building setbacks came into play. And even though the building frontage will be pointing to Highway 67, since there's a corner at Midland Avenue and Highway 67, the portion along Midland Avenue is considered to be a frontage, a front yard. So we had to meet a 50-foot setback from any right of way. So basically, we moved the right of way further to the west so that the southwest corner of the building will be 50 feet away from the right of way. And that's what took us from basically the property, roughly the property line between Michael Gatt and Daniel Duncan to Burdett Street. Couple other points here from questions that came out. Our architectural team is aware that they have, they will need to meet the Woodland Park architectural design standards. The colored elevations that you saw were simply prototypical Les Schwab buildings. And they have, basically our architectural team has not dove into their design yet, so we understand that we'll be required to meet the Mountain West aesthetic. Regarding the access agreement, a preliminary agreement between Les Schwab and Daniel Duncan actually has been signed to provide private access along with temporary construction easement. Now, both parties understand that in the current state, we still have to go through the city review process, and things may change, and a finalized agreement will need to be made. But there has been a signed agreement that was submitted. I think it might have been our first submittal, but both parties know we'll update roughly. It will likely be updated if right-of-way portion gets a little longer or
Can I ask a quick question? Pardon me, Daniel Duncan is what role and with respect to which properties?
Sorry, Daniel Duncan is the owner of Big D Motorsports.
Okay, does he own both of the lots to the south, Les Schwab, or just one of them?
Just
I will pull it up on the screen just so you guys can get a good visual
Because-
here.
All right.
it's a tricky, that kind of corner.
So this is the subject property, Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
This property right here, as well as this property, can you guys see my mouse?
Mhm.
Is Big D Motorsports, and that's owned by Daniel Duncan.
I believe the lot to the south as well.
I thought it was owned by
And what about
Michael
the other
Gatt.
red one?
And
What
then
do you
this
want?
other red one is owned by Mr. Michael Gatt. So those are the names.
But we don't have anything from him, we just have Duncan.
So to clarify, Michael Gatt and Daniel Duncan have signed the right-of-way vacation application form. The Michael Gatt's property there in red is not currently using the access. There is no access to Daniel Duncan's property.
Michael Gas, it has to
Mr.
be,
Gas.
it has to be access.
From, sorry. Michael, the red square that is Michael Gat's property on screen. Accesses to the south. It does not access Burdette. It comes through, I mean, I don't know the legal. Descriptions here, but
I
if you
think-
go to the site, that house is being accessed from the south.
From what's. the
So
name of the street?
this is Burdette Street right here where my mouse is.
Okay.
So Mr. Gat owns this property right here and he accesses his property off of Burdette Street here. And Michael Gat currently accesses his business, Big D Motorsports.
David Duncan.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
Daniel Duncan, Big D Motorsports off of Highway 67. So
Okay.
the applicant would have a access agreement with Mr. Duncan for that access agreement, because those two commercial companies would be the only ones accessing off of that shared access. I hope I didn't confuse everyone along that way.
I was just gonna ask for clarification. When you look at the graphic that you have up there, I thought Michael Gat and Big D Auto owned the property, the commercial property right below the proposed right-of-way area and south going towards the existing shop. And that Duncan owned that house.
I can pull up the assessor site.
Well, it just needs to be clear. The same two properties are there anyway.
Yeah, the properties that touch Highway 67, those are the ones that are associated with Big D Sports and David Duncan. It's further to the west where you've got that other property that actually, even though it touches what should have been developed as Midland Avenue, it actually gets access to that property through the Burdette Street, the north-south street on the western side of Michael Gat's property.
And I think the reality is their actual access is to the lot to the south.
Through the lot to the south. And that's, I think what you're after is, does he own another parcel? Does Mr. Gat own another parcel to the south? And I believe he does. So, but should he ever sell those independently, that piece to the north that touches Midland, it also touches Burdette Street. So even if they're separated and sold independently, that parcel that we're concerned about would have access off of Burdette.
Yeah, I guess maybe to one final clarification. The right-of-way vacation has been signed by both Michael Gat and Daniel Duncan. However, the access agreement is not with Michael Gat. It is just with the Les Schwab property and Daniel Duncan.
And I think this gives a better explanation. So this is the Teller County parcel map here. So I'll click on this parcel, and this is Mr. Gat's property, which accesses off of Burdette Street.
The property immediately to the south of that, CJ.
The one that's like listed 101, right?
Yeah, who's that owner?
This one, L2W Living Trust.
Okay, so that is a different owner, so that's already been split.
No, the 101 in the corner directly across from Mr. Gatz, yeah.
Oh, okay, so this property here will not be, the right-of-way vacation will not, impact this property.
Okay.
This is a good map to keep up there and try to visualize where the vacation request is located adjacent to the existing.
The right-of-way vacation say will not impact the property, Mr. Gat's property, the left of the two
Right.
southern ones. If the right-of-way is vacated, half of the right-of-way gets attached to that property.
The right-of-way vacation does impact Michael Gat.
Yeah, I was saying he gains
Correct.
half of the right-of-way to attach to his property.
It's the shared access.
And I assume then he's supposed to sign up to the agreement which is not the access agreement, it's a property improvement and protection kind of agreement, so he would sign up to that, although, I mean, I guess, I'm not sure. I guess he gets a couple extra feet of property line, he takes on an obligation as well too, so that's part of the reason I'm concerned that everybody's here and participating, because
And You are correct, Mr. Gatt here, this property where I'm circling on my screen, his property line would move to the north
Correct.
Mhm.
approximately here. And he did, sign off on the right-of-way vacation application that was submitted to the city of Woodland Park. So that's all the city requires, as far as that is concerned.
And again, that would be if the entire right of way, except it's listed as the north half.
The city's gonna wanna see all three owners signing up to say if there's any issues with utilities there, that all three of them are gonna be responsible in some way, I would assume.
So that's covered in the condition of approval of the right-of-way vacation. So a condition of approval is that another utility easement be created on the whole portion of the right-of-way that is proposed to be vacated. So if something were to break and the city needed to go in there and fix a water line, say, that they have access to, say, Mr. Gatt's property or Mr. Duncan's or the applicant's. So that would be covered under the utility easement that would be created.
Did you have any more comments as far as the presentation?
Did I,
Don't want to cut you off before we get too involved in
Yeah.
some of these
the
questions.
questions that came up, so on this, looking at this, where the right-of-way vacation ends is, yeah, pretty much where his cursor is, so.
Why does it extend that far west and not align with the north-south street?
We were told the southwest corner of the building needs to meet a 50-foot right-of-way setback from Midland Avenue.
Because it's a front yard.
Because the site is on a corner, both Highway 67 and Midland Avenue are frontages.
Vacating the road to the extent needed to place the building where you desire to have it.
Correct.
Are we also asking for a vacation for Burdette? And otherwise, that looks like Burdette right away that runs north and south.
We viewed it as Burdette Street intersecting with Midland Avenue. And Midland is in this situation, the predominant cross street. It's not like Burdette goes all the way through north-south. So we viewed it as terminating at the south side or the south right-of-way line of Midland Avenue.
Is this line just kind of an error? Typically, right-of-ways don't. When one street intersects another, you don't have different parcels of right-of-way,
Exactly.
correct? So I think that line is just a little misleading in that sense.
Well, it
There's
could have been
another-
how it was platted.
That line didn't show up in the Alta survey. There was no division between Burdette right of way and Midland Avenue right of way that the surveyors found.
But that's showing up on our site.
This is the
Putting it on
Teller
the
County.
website, so
Yeah,
it's-
And-
you create, there may be one, maybe there isn't one now, but you, as the chairman points out, you will be creating one. And perhaps halfway across Burdette,
Correct.
which is odd.
Agreed.
If you had to put one in. And angle it in from the corner and still get your 50-foot distance. I'm just,
The right of way vacation needs to be equal to the north and to the south, so. The design team was reluctant to agree to the setback understanding that Midland Avenue would be a frontage. So I think there could be reinterpretation of that, which would then we could remove the right of way vacation back to the
If
property line between Michael Gatt. and
If
Daniel
Midland
Duncan.
Avenue goes away in the relevant portions, then it can't be your front yard.
You and I agree to that, but we have to follow the interpretations of city staff. Or go down a variance, another public hearing,
Please, no.
So is the building going to face that access road then and not the highway, right?
No.
Are you looking just to kind of go in and curve around and then go?
In layman's terms, the front of the building will be facing Highway 67.
Okay, that's just.
Do we have the civil site plan that we could look at?
Interesting. Hearing the original public comments too, before we beat this 20.
Oh, this is just the presentation, stuff, public hearing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues. So, yeah, we won't be taking public comment after the applicant has opportunity to make his presentation and respond to current questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I think C-102 might be best,
Okay,
the sheet for this.
Okay.
just before we get into this, commissioners, this comes from the original application. So this proposed property line is not the current proposed property line. This was the original application. So the proposed property line is a straight line from this point
Got a hard copy to pass around.
and this point.
That'd be helpful if you have, or just one copy.
And I will mention that the updated site plan and the updated plans that the applicant has sent staff was also included within your staff report.
So you'll even see the 50-foot dimension to that corner. So
And
Oh, I just. Okay.
and for the record, that site plan, Derek, was included within the staff report as well. So that is on our public website.
I guess why, regardless of the property line location, the south side of Midland shows development to the south of that on the adjacent property owned by
Duncan.
Mr. Duncan.
correct, part of the agreement with both the city and CDOT to accept the access point into the Les Schwab property was contingent on Daniel Duncan's property being willing to relocate their current access point to match to align with the Les Schwab point access. So the accesses are straight across from each other, and they're now an additional. Daniel Duncan's access is now an additional 80 feet to the west roughly. Concerns with accessing Highway 67. Maximizing the amount of queue space and trying to minimize a vehicle leaving Daniel Duncan's and basically doing a U-turn through a stop sign.
And I guess that same drawing showed the vacation of the right of way aligning with Michael Gatt's west property line.
Originally, yes,
What caused that change?
the determination that the south side of the building is a building frontage and therefore would need to be 50 feet away as a setback. So again, if the right of way goes away, we didn't need that 50-foot setback.
Is there public access through this vacated street?
Excuse me?
Is there public access,
Is there?
legal public access on this driveway? If it's vacated, and if I want to walk my dog and I like walking up the hill, do I have the right to walk across it?
You would have the right to walk on the paved portion. I'm sure Les Schwab wouldn't mind anyone walking their dog up that.
There's no public access easement included in the easement.
No, because if it's absorbed by the other owners, right?
Well, the Midland, currently Midland's a public street right of way. I could walk up and down, and my kids used to sled down the hill, all kinds of fun things there. And I'm just wondering if that's being prohibited now that we're losing Midland. I mean, I'm not proposing driving my four-wheel drive up the,
Make
The
it a
hill.
condition and Les Schwab will make it a public access as well.
It's definitely a condition that you guys could set forth as well.
okay, I just didn't know what the current status was, so I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, I'm sure they wouldn't mind as much foot traffic near their store as possible. And we can pass that along and make sure that's provided.
So the reason for the vacation of the road seems to be so you can have the building placed where you'd like to and not maintain that 50-foot frontage. And that the city's reluctance to develop that and maintain the road.
Just said they moved where the driveway is.
Right, because the city didn't want to maintain.
Right, Les Schwab is happy to build this extension, they're happy to build the new access point for Big D Motorsports. They're happy to maintain snow removal, all that in order to develop this site.
Well, what's the setback on the north property line?
I believe the side requirement to a building is 15 feet.
What's the distance between the property line and that building currently?
I don't have an exact number. It's definitely greater than 15 feet. There's a 10
Is
foot.
it 50 feet?
Is it 50? Probably. The north, there's no question on the north. It's not a
My
public.
question is leading up to the orientation of the building. If the site plan were flipped, you could maintain the 50-foot setback off Midland and still meet the 15-foot setback on the north. So
There's the setback to the north. The setback is to Midland Avenue. It's not to the north property line, but
one alternate solution to your current design would be to flip the site plan, have your access aisle on the south side of the building, would then still maintain the 50-foot to the building and meet the north setback requirement as well.
understood. The grades in that gap between the building and the Midland Avenue right of way are in excess of 3-to-1 slopes. So,
Grading consideration based on the existing contours.
yeah, so if that building, if a drive were to be built on the south side of the building, again, now we're talking about putting in 15-foot plus tall retaining walls. To what extent, it's unclear, but large.
So the existing grades make it impractical to pursue that.
Yes, this is probably about the 15th rendition of the site plan.
I'm just trying to understand how we got where we're at.
No, I totally understand, yeah. No, we looked at a lot of different ways to try and get an access further west to appease initial comments, and then yes, with the first idea that we needed to move, well, you could see to the center line of the Midland Avenue, right, where we're at 57 feet to the building. So we thought, oh, can we just move 7 feet north? But that would only get us to the center line of Midland. Long story short, this is kind of the only way this site will be developed by Les Schwab, given all the other constraints.
So there's a representative from Les Schwab, J. Clint Jameson, that is got his hand raised and asking to speak, so I've
Keep
Oops.
forgetting we got the people out in
think I've
the ether
unmuted.
world. Yeah, as part of your presentation, we certainly would recognize him to make comments.
So Mr. Jameson would need to unmute himself and he should be able to speak.
Hi, this is Clint. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity tonight. My name is Clint Jameson. I own Centerpoint CRE, and I am the developer of this property. And I'm sorry I can't attend in person, but I do appreciate that you allow us to connect via Zoom. I just wanted to add a couple points to Derek's presentation, if that's okay.
Yes, please proceed.
Yeah, so I was the one that negotiated the cross-access maintenance and temporary construction easement with Mr. Duncan. And so it's not preliminary, it's finalized. It's been reviewed by attorneys and we have submitted that. It's been signed and notarized and submitted to the city. And it's ready to record as soon as we close on the land. What it requires is we will construct this kind of new access drive up to the western boundary of the Les Schwab and new Dan Duncan curb cut. Because his curb cut has shifted 80 feet to the west, that area is currently unpaved on his land. So we're going to pave that, clean that all up for him. And we are responsible for 100% of the maintenance of the access drive. So he's not responsible for that. He saw the value in having additional retail next to him and just bringing, more traffic, more customers, but also getting his access drive and curb cut cleaned up. But I want to clarify, it's not preliminary, it's fully negotiated, fully executed, and ready to be recorded at closing. And then just additionally, as Derek mentioned, I think this is the 15th or maybe 20th version of the site plan that we did after kind of working with the city and city comments, but also with CDOT. And this is the only place we can place this building and still circulate and meet all the different requirements. And then that 50-foot right-of-way setback came up kind of at the end. We didn't think this was fronting or the front yard setback. We thought this was side yard setback. So that required us to abandon additional right-of-way. But I've been in communication with Mr. Gatt. Mr. Gatt is fully supportive of the right-of-way abandonment. He gets access off Burdette. He has no issues. And then I'm sure you've seen how Midland Drive is. It's super steep, and I'm not even sure you can build a road up there. And that's why there isn't currently one. It just goes to basically where our entrance is going to be. So I just want to give a little history on my communications with Mr. Duncan and Mr. Gatt.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And then there's another gentleman who's part of the engineering team for Les Schwab, Zach Graham, who also has his hand raised. And if you desire for him to speak, he just needs to unmute himself also.
We certainly welcome his comments and input.
Yes, thank you, commissioners. Appreciate it. Clint covered a lot of it. I think I'm available for more comments. I've been involved with this project since before even Derek got involved, and there's been a lot of go around on this one. And I think the biggest thing that I would like to reiterate is just Midland Avenue and the technical and feasibility that we ran into with actually being able to design a road. It just being too steep to get up the road. And then even looking at extending it further than what we had really would have ended up with retaining walls and your utilities under retaining walls, and really just an untenable situation for long-term maintenance and access along that road. And so, as it's been said, I'll reiterate again, there's been at least 20 versions of the site plan to get what works here. So I'll stop there, but I'm available to help answer any further questions that you might have as well, especially on some of the longer term history of the project. Thank you very much.
Well, any other questions for the applicant at this time? We can move on to public comment.
Are we going to hear a presentation? You have just addressed comments. Do you have a formal presentation you'd like to make?
We do not have an additional formal presentation over what the staff report was tonight. Just want to make sure we cover any questions you guys have.
Mr. Chairman, I would just say, let's go ahead and, as long as we reserve the right to both ask questions of staff and the applicant after public
Again,
presentation.
our procedure, we go through the staff presentation, we have the applicant make their presentation and comments. We'll then go to the public and see people online, people in the audience, get their comments. And then we'll ask the applicant to come back to rebuttal those or respond to those questions and comments. And at that point, I anticipate we'd have opportunity to ask further questions of the applicant based on public comment and as staff as well before we go to debating how to proceed.
I have just one question I'd like to ask first before we get into the
Yes.
public. Do you agree with the conditions that you heard in the read in the staff report and as you heard modified tonight?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you in a little bit. At this point, we will open public comment. And so if you come up and give your name and address, do we have anybody signed up yet? CJ?
You all can come up one by one, please. Thank you.
My name is John Necessary. I am the adjacent property owner to the west. Just purchased the property back in October of last year, so just going on a year. I opposed this project based on the sheer volume of noise. The traffic doesn't concern us. The vacation of the right of way doesn't concern us. I was a mechanic for 15 years. One of the reasons I had to stop being a mechanic was due to service-connected disabilities, one of them being hearing. I work for the Department of the Air Force now and stationed at the Air Force Academy and am mandated to work from home 2 days a week. And I usually work about 5 days a week from home, given the projects that I work on. One of the other questions that I would throw out, I have a buddy who was born and raised in Woodland Park, lives in the house he was born in. When I told him this, his first thing was another freaking tire store in Woodland Park. So that leads to, is it really needed? But this project would literally, if this went through the orientation of the building, the bays are pointed right at my house. Sound wall is not going to help as I am 40 to 60 feet above this property. This would literally put me in a position to have to sell my house and move based on my work. The other side of selling my house, the city just assessed my house this year at $187,000 higher than last year. I did not contest this because before I knew of this project, my realtor, who's a close friend, said, your property's well worth that. No problem at all. We could probably even get a little more than what it's been assessed at, which is about $640,000. As soon as I told him about this project, he said, you need to contest and you need to sell your house because this will ruin property values. If adjacent to commercial property, obviously it won't affect them, it will improve their values. But I've been in Woodland Park since 2021. I bought this house to be close to town as an investment for my children. I poured every penny I had into this house and have been very pleased with the growth that I've received until this moves. And now, like I said, literally I'm in a position that if this proposal goes through based on my health, my job, and what I desire from the city of Woodland Park, I wouldn't be able to live there. It's not possible. The equipment that goes into the building and 20th iteration with the bays, like I said, pointed right at my house. Everybody's been to a tire store, know the kind of noise that's there. The last shop that I worked in when I was still a mechanic, we actually did tires on occasion, had the equipment. We had 2 individuals that had to leave the building during tire changes due to the sound pressure and the level of sound from not only the air guns, but the beads being popped, it's just a very noisy operation. It's not like a mechanic shop that I worked in, that we would do 3-4 sets of tires in a week. It's not that. It is from open to close, rent, 6 bays, 2 techs per bay. Removing, putting on tires, popping beads. It's just that close to a neighborhood. Again, I know that my disagreement's probably mute, it doesn't matter. And I'm actually meeting with my realtor next week to talk about what to do in my house, which really saddens me and is gonna kill my children. But it is what it is. I don't really have any other comments other than I stringently disagree with this project. Thank you for your time.
Any questions?
I have a question for you, sir.
Can you put
Yes, yes.
picture up the screen so the gentleman can show where his house is, just so I can better understand his comment?
Are you wanting number 2 or number 7?
Well, I'm not sure.
Probably would be county.
County
Yeah,
map
the
would be,
county map.
County map would be the best option. If you would, if he says when it comes up, just point to where you are so I can understand better the orientation of your property and the other.
Because I was wondering what was across the street.
This is
Across the
well,
highway
this is to
there.
the west, so I.
It's uphill.
Oh, I see.
So yes, where the proposed is right there. That's correct. 920 West Midland.
I see.
Okay, all right.
So I'll be looking off of my deck and to the parking lot.
would you pan to the east just for quick reference? What is across the street? Let's see,
More commercial.
credit union and then residents further north.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Necessary. Appreciate the comments.
I have a question for you, sir.
Yes,
When you purchased your property in 2021, were you aware that this property was zoned service commercial?
I was aware that it was zoned commercial, but not service.
Okay. Did you investigate what kind of uses could go there?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Other comments from the audience? We'll get back to rebuttal after we have public comment. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jackie Gebbert and I have a home at 927 West Midland Avenue. I also oppose this project. It seems from hearing from the representative from Lush Law today and staff that obviously this has been a work in progress for a long time. They're on first name basis. The August, I believe it was 10th meeting was canceled right before the meeting was supposed to happen. Obviously, that was known between the city of Woodland Park and the Lush Schwab representative before. We were all prepared to come on that day. We also showed up on September 14th with a lack of membership here. Coincidentally, a Lush Schwab representative didn't appear on that day. So I find that interesting that we were the only people to attend that meeting and then it was miraculously canceled. So here we are today. Obviously, there's been a lot of communication. It seems to me to be a round peg going into a square hole. Seems like the city of Woodland Park staff is trying to push this forward. It doesn't seem that this is the size building or the type of building, which is being referred to by Lush Schwab as retail. This is not retail, as John mentioned, my neighbor. This is a very loud property that will affect not only the 5 people that were notified by the city of Woodland Park with these letters. And again, a letter wasn't sent for the September 14th meeting. So I find it very interesting that the public of the city of Woodland Park, this is not only affecting the people on West Midland Avenue, this will affect the whole aesthetic of Woodland Park. This is our community. You have people on Zoom that are not even participating in person for their own project. They're laughing at the vacation of the sledding hill. He laughed when they were saying, oh, sure, we'll allow the neighbors to use our property. This is something that will have to be altered to allow their project to go through. This is not something that, yes, maybe the zoning is that, but their project is not fitting on the property. And that street is the city of Woodland Park Street. That's not the adjoining landowner's property. If that's vacated, sure, that will be absorbed by them, but that's owned by us, the taxpayers. And so that's going to just go away to accommodate their proposed plan. And yes, maybe move it, but a 30-foot, did I hear a 30-foot building is going there? That's crazy. Another point that I heard that it was approved, or whatever word that was, that it will not affect property owners' values. That was somehow pushed forward as a yes, that condition was met. It absolutely will affect the property owners. It absolutely will. And that is wrong to have just pushed that through in such a flippant way. It's a terrible idea in my vision, not only for us, but for the whole city to have this. You know, there's other things that I came up, I don't have the whole booklet that you're looking at, and so I was trying to keep up with the slides, but it really is, like I said, a round peg in a square hole that will absolutely plummet our property values. And also, I think will look terrible in the city of Woodland Park. And then to John's point also, we really don't need another tire shop. Oh, that's the other thing. If we want to have more revenue coming into the city of Woodland Park, why wouldn't we approve this for a product, for a business that will bring a different source of revenue? We have tire shops. We have the same amount of cars, the same amount of people that are already going to certain tire shops. All this will do is water down that revenue. It's not bringing additional revenue. And those are my comments. I hope that you take them into consideration and deny this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gebhardt. Anyone else in the audience? Making comment? See, do you have anybody online with hands raised?
No one with a hand raised, and there's, as what I'm recognizing in terms of other attendees, just one other person that's on Zoom right now. We had more earlier in the meeting. There's two representatives from Les Schwab. There's our consultants for our work session, and then another person that's there that's not raising their hand.
Certainly invite people on Zoom if they'd like to participate in the discussion. Raise your hand. We'll let you address comments. And another opportunity to come up and speak. There's one last chance. Anybody? Almost like an auction.
Is now the appropriate time on behalf of the applicant, or should we wait?
We will have that in just a moment.
Okay, excuse me. Thank you then.
First, I would like to close the public comment. And now I'd give the opportunity for the applicant to offer rebuttal or comments on the questions and comments that have been made. So is that online then? Please go ahead.
Yes,
Then-
yes, sir. This is Zach Graham again, an owner's representative for Les Schwab, and do appreciate the comments. And I do have, I could share it. I do have data of a recent noise study that was done at a Les Schwab from the open bays. The opponent is correct. It's very loud. It's noise damaging though to the ear immediately adjacent. The study we recently had done, you know, the property's about 192 feet, or the bay doors are 192 feet from the western property boundary. The study we had done was 198 feet from the open bay doors and operations, put it at 64 decibels measured, which is at a no risk to hearing dam level. If you look at the charts, it puts you in between conversation and sounds of office immediately. So I recognize that it is loud if you're working in there. That's why they wear ear protection when they're operating. But the attenuation of that noise at that distance is at a lower level. So
Okay.
that's all I would add on the noise side, and happy to answer any other questions.
Okay. Any other comments in response to the public comment from the applicant? No. Questions from commissioners for the applicant or staff?
Question for staff. So properties between residential and commercial require a fence 72 inches solid. That's it. So it's mainly a visual barrier. Was there any discussion of alternate barriers because of this particular business and its location in the city and engineers' efforts?
That is correct, Mr. Kennedy. As far as code is concerned, that fencing standard does comply to this. So that was one of the first comments that staff had on their first site plan. So their updated site plan did have that fence in, but as far as other noise mitigation or anything like that, no, we did not have conversations regarding.
I didn't actually notice where the fence was located, but is it at the property line or is it at the back of the development? Can you pull it back? Back of the curb?
On the backside of the.
No.
And the houses are significantly farther up the hill? There's a pretty good stand of trees there. I assume most of those are evergreen.
They're mature pines, correct?
Yeah.
And what about like tires and things like that in storage? Did you have any plans on how you plan on?
Everything will be stored internally.
I had the same question. Where is the location of that screening wall?
Hmm.
Could that screening wall be upgraded to a noise
About
mitigation?
50 feet, 55 feet west of the building at the west edge of the parking lot, based on the drawing I have.
Correct. It's basically right behind the back of curve of the backside of the building.
I can pull the site plan up here too.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
I think it's good. One thing I'm not seeing on the plan is pedestrian access to the storefront. I drop my car off, I'm getting my brakes done, tire fixed, providing your services. I want to walk downtown, have a cup of coffee. I'm walking through the parking lot. I'd like to see pedestrian access connecting to the sidewalk.
That was another comment that the city provided, I believe, on our first one. So there is now a sidewalk connection from the store entrance, complete with ADA curb ramps and a striped crosswalk. No, yeah, come.
Okay, it's just not shown in the drawing I have in front of me, seal drawing, so. Appreciate that. Thank you.
And for reference, this line here with the dots is the proposed fencing.
Okay.
And this is the west side of the property.
And how far is that approximately from the property line to the west?
The fence is approximately 135 feet from the west property line.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that in the staff report, we talk about the drainage on the site, and because of the constraints of the site, the drainage will be underground. Has that been something that's acceptable by the city engineering department?
Yes, sir. With the applicant's updated plans, they also submitted for a engineering variance, which is approved administratively by our city engineer, and he has stamped that approved.
Okay, so
That's-
underground
Yes, sir. That
facilities are
has,
okay.
yeah, that engineering code deviation has been approved.
Okay. I have to ask my usual question, and my colleague to left to me will cringe, but.
How much water?
Water. We know that this site has been zoned service commercial. And when the TAP study, the recent TAP study was done and allocations and so on and so forth were completed, it was assumed that zone commercial would be typical for so much water to be used. And I also noticed in the staff report that the city utilities said that they have no comments about that problem and issue of water capacity. And I just wanted to make a note for the record on that. But I will bring that up every time. We talked about the vacation and how the property line of the vacation will split between the property owners. Properties will go to the adjacent property owner. So I don't think there's going to be any surprises there. Again, utilities will both be public and private, so the agreement will have to be approved by the city and the private property owners adjacent, as well as the applicant. And I assume that when you said that you agreed with all the conditions, you knew there was a condition for the fire department installation of 2 hydrants and their concerns. There are also concerns with the electric company core, and they had some concerns too. And those things will have to be approved before we can approve the final zoning development permit as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, the city has some regulations on noise. We have a decibel level that's required for noise hydrants. And that's
Within the zoning regulations, which is, if I remember correctly, broadly addresses noise. There's a different section of city code that is a little more specific around enforcement of noises that disturb a neighborhood. I don't recall if that has a decibel level in there. Within state statute, it does specify decibel levels between residential and industrial type situations. And it also distinguishes between day and nighttime noise levels. And I'm gonna be close, but not exact for citing statute. I want to say the industrial noise was actually as much as 75 decibels for an acceptable daytime noise level in an industrial zone or for industrial uses. Residential, I want to say are like 55 decibels at night. But I don't
This
have
is an
that.
industrial though.
This is
I recognize that, but the statute only makes the distinction between residential and industrial, if I remember correctly. It doesn't get into that
Maybe it is.
evidently a gray zone of commercial.
what are the hours of operation proposed?
I think the standard Les Schwab is 8 to 6:30. It may vary slightly store to store, but they are closed on Sundays. I think it's standard hours, Monday through Saturday. Basically general business hours, not late at night.
And would the bay doors be open or closed during the operation? Obviously, you have to get the cars in and out, but
I think generally in the summer, they will likely remain open most of the time.
If you look at pictures of tire stores from any Google, the bay doors are open anytime the weather permits.
Ours are open when it's 40 degrees or warmer.
It's almost always open service bays during operating hours. I did a little research just to check it out. The larger volume devices in tire stores from the National Noise Exposure and Evaluation Study from one of these government studies indicated they're over 85 decibels on the ratcheting machines and the bead popping and so forth. 100 decibels, if you're sitting in a quiet place, can be heard over 1,000 feet away. typically can be heard. It's definitely not damaging or probably not even a nuisance at 1,000 feet, but I don't disagree that from what I've seen, that his numbers from his study of about a 200 foot being 30 some decibels is probably, I'm sorry, 64 decibels.
64
Is probably pretty accurate from what I'm finding on some other things I read. So chances of people being able to hear it within 200 or 300 feet are pretty good. If you had your windows and doors closed, I know I've been in tire shops sitting in the office and I don't hear a lot of noise. I hear it, but it's not loud. What's going on in the shop. So a closed building is one thing. Across Woodland Park, everybody wants to have their windows open. I got a neighbor sleeps year round with his windows open. He comments about me talking in the driveway across the street if I'm saying good night to my kids at 10 o'clock. So anyway, so noise travels. It does bother people and we try and be respectful. So this is a really a quandary as to how could we mitigate noise pollution to the surrounding neighborhood. Chances are you're going to hear it. Then I look at this as another thing is the people who are living there are not that far from 67 highway. During the day, I don't live too far from 67, but I'm on 67 a lot and I hear motorcycles and everybody going up and down the street. So I know they're hearing other noises if they live that close. So it's just how much of this is going to affect the quality of that life and the value of the property, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a real quandary. And I definitely listen to you guys and hear what you're saying. Again, this is a tough one. But I do believe they'll hear it if it's that close. Go ahead.
Can I just make a comment on the noise? I agree about 67. I do hear 67
Well,
and have no.
excuse me. Yeah, I guess we'll take.
Sorry about that. Yes, I do hear 67, but it's a different kind of noise. It's a even tempered, except for the occasional motorcycle. And I have some manufacturers data.
Yeah.
On the you know, it's over
It's easy to find.
10 decibels inside. You're correct. It's just a different noise. It's a ram, ram, ram. It's not cars going by.
Yep.
The cars, because of my tendonitis from the military, they actually calm my tendonitis because I hear the cars for just the so. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Would the applicant be open to the idea of upgrading the existing screening wall shown at the very western edge of the parking lot to a screening wall / sound barrier, sound mitigation type of structure? That would help considerably if we had open doors facing west, and then we could have a sound mitigation wall. Just upgrade the screening wall. Would go a long way to help the issues of the neighbors for noise. Would you be open to that?
I think Les Schwab would be open to that. I think the reality, as almost initially pointed out, is the grade difference in sound going up towards the house. Would be quite challenging to build a structure tall enough to truly do any real mitigation. We can investigate.
I was wondering if something further to the property line, closer to where their house is, could potentially be constructed that wouldn't be ugly and in their space, but still provide a barrier to help with noise.
And that would take out trees. To be
Well,
which the
we'd have to come up with something that would,
plan to leave the trees is helpful. It also
Yeah.
helps. So,
But, excuse me, but we guess we can't address questions to you directly, but public comment is closed at this
Okay.
time. So,
And that kind of leads what we were just talking about, that we have on the landscaping plan, a limit of work line that shows where the grading will stop, so on and so forth. I'd like to see that identified as a limit of work and a / natural buffer to remain in that area. And again, that kind of reinforces the issue of maintaining the trees on the site in the western portion. And I think our code actually calls for that to come out in the landscaping plan.
If there were a natural berm or something that we could build up, if there was enough soil to spoil from the development, they could maybe build something
I'm just saying.
land-like to,
Or just leave it alone.
yeah. That's all for me.
Jones, any comments, questions?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, does Les Schwab have any noise mitigation going on at other stores or other retail outlets? Is there anything that you guys have, or that Les Schwab has done in the past?
I'll let Zach Graham speak to that. He's been involved in far more projects than I have.
Yeah, I think similar to where you're going with the wall, we've seen adjacent to residential places to have a wall. I mean, I don't think Les Schwab would be opposed to it. I think there are the challenges with what the points of that have been made. The noise is going to kind of, if you put the wall down low, the noise is going to go up over the wall because of the height above the property, and the natural trees are probably going to help attenuate noise. You don't want to lose that both visual and noise attenuation you get from the trees. So that what you're talking about is generally kind of what they see. Otherwise the other ordinances that we see, if it's 85 decibels, usually it's 85 decibels at the property line. We show we're below that. And then our operating hours, 8 to 6, closed on Sundays, really help that as well. Nobody's out there at midnight with the sound. So.
Okay. And so is it possible to submit for us to get a hold of your noise study?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We could submit that. I could even email it now if you want it.
Sure.
Who would I send that to?
CJ, imagine.
See if I have his.
Yeah, my email address is cgates, CGATES at city-woodlandpark.org.
But I guess to Zach, I think that was Zach speaking.
Yes, sir.
So I think the first part of my question was, have you had to do the noise mitigation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And those have been primarily, well, the ones actually, the only ones that I know of have been the screen walls.
Okay. And just, it's more of a curiosity, I guess. How many sites have you had to do that?
I've probably been involved with, over 100 Les Schwabs, and it's been one in Parker, Colorado, that's immediately adjacent to a residential. In that case, the building's within 25 feet of residential.
Okay.
Don, any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Perhaps piggybacking off of what Larry said, maybe you could add more trees that might help take some of the sound, take some of the view, take some of the, something like that might be more of a suggestion.
I guess at this point.
And a couple
Any
of
questions, sir?
Just, first off, I'm not familiar with the neighborhood usage of the area too. The comment was made, but then we sort of dropped reference to public access to the vacated right of way. Is that something that's something we believe to be useful? And I'm not sure how important it is once you get across to the driveway getting in, but there's some distance that apparently people sled or something else that is there any utility in
Of the hill itself?
conditioning the vacated area from having public access to it? Or is it, or is it trivial or silly? I just don't know that it's important enough. I have a feeling it's not clear to me that the only part that's really useful is running along Mr. Gant's property. Once you get down much farther to the park, to the driveway area, it's not. So do we just leave that well enough alone? I'm just trying to get a sense.
So, but his property is going to extend, so he'll own that, right?
Right.
So that hill, whatever, I don't know what part of the hill it
Well, there
is.
was public comment pointing out.
Well, currently the
that there's
space is accessible from the existing Midland Road.
Right.
and
on-
for that.
You would assume from both ends. Burdette appears to not have private property between it and the right of way that's being talked about as well. So there's potentially currently 3 points of access without crossing somebody's private property that are shown on the map. And we would be vacating the one from 67, which would cut off 1 of 3 permanent public access points that are there now. So it should still have 2.
And perhaps cutting off half of the second one, given this is another area too. It's
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to enter
I hate
part of it.
coming in with this and the diagonal ending or this ending that it doesn't match up with Burdette's east line.
I
think Karen had some
understand.
suggestion to help.
Well, no, I understand the discomfort with that, where it does terminate. But back to your, discussion about the access versus public access. The first condition that we have attached to the right-of-way vacation, is where we clearly set out that, yes, the right-of-way is being vacated, but, a general utility and access easement be established in the vacated area. And the right-of-way vacation exhibit, that's attached to that ordinance that gets recorded, labels that vacated area as access and general utility easement.
When you word it that way, I read that, struck me as you got permission to go to it, to do the repair work, to handle the utilities. And such too, and it wasn't just, I'm gonna use it so that I can drag my snow sled across it. At least that's as it was worded there too.
Yeah, and I see your distinction. So, yeah, it doesn't include the word public or, public access and then a general utility easement. It just says access. and
Is there
general
interest in
utilities.
adding public before the word access in that condition?
No.
I'm interested. And maintaining.
Maybe we can make it a
Lisa.
sub motion when we're doing things there's, all right. And the other one, and the second one, which we just started to talk about, the western end of the vacated area. Is there a way to match that up without moving the building? I mean, frankly, the idea that it's a front yard seems anomalous to me because before they can put a building up, front yard will have gone away, it's been vacated. So the front yard must be 67.
I would recommend that it get moved further to the west, so it, the western terminus of the vacated area would align with the western right-of-way line of Burdette Street.
And I would disagree with that because you got a connection there too. It may not be widely used.
But they can't locate it with the east right-of-way line of Burdette Street without impacting the setbacks. And I'd rather have a clear, distinct north-south, or, a straight line as opposed to something up. And
I just.
we went down that road before, but that's why it is where it is.
You agree that once the right of way is vacated, that can't be the front yard anymore.
That's the whole.
I mean, when it's gone, it can't be the front yard. The front yard must, the only relevant front yard is 67.
And Lee, keep in mind too, that we're not vacating the entire right of way, only 1/2 of it. So it's not going to completely
So west of
resolve that issue.
Mr. Gatt's property, that still maintains a right of way, and that still is a front yard. So it's that.
And that's where the 50 feet line is drawn to, that corner.
That's
why it's out to that
50
point.
feet.
All right, I'd rather leave the connection between the two. But
No, I
okay.
agree. What is the distance between the adjacent property corner and the new
Mhm.
I mean, is that even, could you drive a vehicle through there? I mean, there's grading issues, obviously, but. And who gets that portion of the street that goes to Mr. Gatt?
This portion right here,
Yes,
correct.
but it's not adjacent to his property. I'm a little confused
Yeah,
on the
that's-
standard procedures for that.
Yeah. That's right. Does it actually, should all of that go to Les Schwab?
No,
No,
typically the half goes to one side, half goes to the other.
So half
property
goes to
owners.
Burdette Street? Right away? Right away doesn't. It's not.
Yeah. So related to this, part of the reason that you see their area way over here, kind of in the 3/4 of the way through Burdette Street, is if that vacation line runs straight through here, this is right away then. This whole thing is right away. And then we have to apply that 50-foot yard or the 50-foot setback here at this corner,
Why?
because this is a right of way and per code, the street setback gets applied wherever there is a right of way adjacent to the property. So-
So I have multiple front, how about 67?
I'm sorry, what?
67 also a front yard?
Yes, it's a street, so there's that 50-foot setback over on the.
Corner lot
highway.
rule.
And it's always challenging when
Seems
you've
like
got
you're right for
a
a variance.
lot with multiple right of ways adjacent to it and how that essentially street setback gets applied. At every time there's a street touching the property. We recognize that this is challenging and rather than go to the Board of Adjustment. Or take a bite out of the corner of the building, which we had suggested at one point, not a great idea, but we don't have to make great ideas sometimes, we just provide options. The applicant, this is what they came forward with. And they really have been trying to balance a variety of competing interests here. We talk internally all the time about how all the pieces have been picked off in Woodland Park. Anything that you guys are seeing nowadays come with a lot of development challenges. And this was one of them where to get their access into this property as far back off of 67 as possible to provide all the stacking distance. And then they've got all the grade and terrain issues associated with the property. And it was actually our city engineer that had suggested, well, if you just vacate this road, then you have more land to work with. That in their mind, it seemed to solve a couple of issues. But that's why you have what you would have in front of you. It was like the best balance of trying to coordinate all this.
Can you help with the question that Chairman asked about the southwest corner of the vacated right of way? Whose property is it? Does it go to Mr. Gant?
No, his property would end right here, would be straight up and down from his western property line. I believe this probably just ends up being, well, this piece here would be, my guess would be city. Since we otherwise
Okay,
own the
right.
right of way.
And at least that helps too, that there's probably room to maneuver a vehicle there, was doing repair work or something else too.
It's this piece here, north of the midpoint there, that would be part of Les Schwab's.
You redrew that, it would make it seem less problematic.
It's pretty much like the one they showed us with the line there already.
Which one? I'm not sure.
well, I think at the beginning of the statement, I also, of the hearing, I suggested that why are we vacating only half of that right of way? If we took the whole right of way, these issues all go away.
And when you say the whole right of way, how far to the west are you thinking?
To the back of the property line?
Yeah,
Can you go to the county's map again? Because I don't think it moves the problem slightly. Okay.
Your concern, Larry, is that we're splitting it east side and west side, not north and south side. East side versus west.
So the corner of the Les Schwab property is here where my mouse is kind of scrolling around. Which actually then ends up at the midpoint on this property to the south.
If you do that, we got another landowner you gotta bring into the deal to approve it and be happy with it.
Two.
Two more.
Looking at the assessor's map, it's pretty obvious that Burdett's in a public right of way. Why the line there is splitting that, I don't know. Could have been drafted
Drafting
here.
error.
I think it's a mapping error because when you look further to the south around West Lorraine, you see a similar
Oh, it's there
line
again.
across there.
Probably could have been where plats were platted.
Subdivision.
Yeah,
But almost where they're proposing it goes now, right? After we do everything, is that what we're saying? If we agree to this.
I don't understand your question, John.
No, I was just saying if we were moving property lines and this and that and the other, and if this goes through and it's approved, it's similar to what the proposal will be.
Their proposal that's on the table actually has the right of way to be vacated about 3/4 of the way across Burdette. So it falls, we're about where my mouse is going up and down.
and this is probably a good photograph to look at and see how dense that vegetation is on the west side of the property already. We've talked about noise buffers and that looks pretty substantial to me. Unless those are all aspens.
What's on the other, what would be on the west side? What's that industrial that's in the, is that Big R
This is Tractor Supply.
Tractor Supply? I thought so, I wasn't sure, I was just trying to get up.
One thing worth investigating, I think, is what is this tree species there on the western side of the property? Since you see in a specific type of pine, because you see in Colorado, we've had issues with mountain pine beetle devastating different tree stands. And we've been doing what we can to stay ahead of that in Woodland Park. But there's no treatment for them. Once the tree gets infested, it's pretty much doomed. So that may be part of what they should be looking at is investigating what are those tree species and is something else need to be planted to kind of anticipate potentially the mountain pine beetle devastating that.
I'd make a couple general comments on it too, and thinking to some of the comments from the public. There's limited amount of service commercial land available in the city. This is one set of fights divide both of the zoning and a comprehensive plan for this. Seems to be an appropriate usage that's in the area. It's been known for a long time that it was service commercial, which is a fairly intensive use compared to some of the other kind of commercial ones. So I don't think it's imposing great impacts beyond that which is expected and inherent in the service commercial kind of business. Talking about the sound mitigation, it seems there's fairly large distances. I would not be supportive of trying to relocate a fence up in the woods, and you're going to be taking that, having the equipment taking down trees and starting erosion and such in the other one. I think the sound wall near the building is probably the best way to go in that. For some reason, the last 2 points we talked about the edge of it. It sounds like by city ordinance, the way the land would split would have on the west side, the top half of the right of way goes to Les Schwab, the bottom half stays with the city right of way. It deals with the distance setback, and it still leaves a connection between the Burdette right of way and the other, and the western portion of the Midland right of way. So that's all right. When a motion is made regarding recommendation on it, I guess perhaps I suggest we either add or have a motion to consider if we should, people wish to say the access easement should be public access easement to clarify the use of it. And I remind you that at the very beginning, we mentioned that the city count, the staff recommendation that should be modified to refer to a automotive and vehicle repair and maintenance shop, not to a Les Schwab tire store. Just because it should be of general applicability now to a particular usage. So that's sort of my thoughts on it. Chair, I'm sorry, you wanted to talk.
That's fine. I was gonna get one of the same subjects. I would like to see the public access included, so there can be dog trail, social trail somehow getting up and down and not losing that connection that we have with the public right of way. There was a discussion of a natural buffer, and I think that would be a reasonable inclusion into the CUP. So there is, well, they can't develop that until they come back with a modified CUP or future development anyway, but just to reinforce that natural buffer. As far as Lee's comments on the sound wall, because of the grade differential, I don't think it's going to have much impact to the benefit by building that and just, we have the fence for visual screening. But again, with the height, that's not gonna screen too much except the cars parked right there. So I would not support requirements for a sound wall.
I would agree with you that it's not, it'd have to be so tall to be a direct line between the house. The trees and natural barriers are much more beneficial in this situation, I would believe.
Any other comments or discussion before we entertain a motion?
Mr. Chair, do you recommend that we do separately the vacation and the conditional use?
I believe that was Steve.
Yeah.
Which one comes first? Because without the right of way, the rest of it doesn't work very well.
Yeah, as much as the presentation, I think CJ covered the CUP first. In your staff report, we did list the right of way vacation first, so I would suggest the right of way vacation.
Right,
So
I move then that the planning commission adopt the staff recommendation. With the revision that the item 1 referring to access and general utility easement be revised to say public access and general utility easement.
I'll second.
and just for point of clarification, staff did have a third condition that we had added in the presentation.
And my intent was to include that.
Okay.
Well, you can revise your motion if we had a second.
I thought actually, okay, was it as, right?
Let's restate that and make sure
Okay.
we're all on the
Alright.
same page.
That the planning commission adopt the staff recommendation regarding the vacation of the right of way as presented to the meeting this evening, with the change that item 2 refer to public access and general utility easement.
For the record, item 1, condition of approval number 1.
Condition of approval number 1, yes. Sorry. That's still.
That's still second.
All right.
I just wanted to make sure you were done all the way.
Unless there's any comments, take a vote, please.
Vice Chair Brown,
Yes.
Don DeZello,
Yes.
George Jones,
Yes.
Ken Kennedy,
Yes.
Larry Larson,
Yes.
Sean Nielsen,
Yes.
and Chair Hartsfield.
Yes. And that puts us to the CUP SPR portion. I guess the only modification to staff's recommendation would be to include the designation as a natural buffer for the landscape area to the west.
Okay, is that then is an item 7?
Listed, well, taking note, that would be item 7.
You have suggested wording for that? You want to make your vote? Well, not, oh, okay, you have suggested wording for 7 for that.
And as far as staff, I just want to make sure I'm very clear. We just want that designation on the landscaping plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the landscaping plan needs approval, right?
Yeah, so that can be part of the condition of approval for with the final site plan comes a final landscaping plan, which we have not seen yet because they haven't. Typically, they get through city council first and then the final landscaping plan comes in along with the other construction documents. So if you all decide on making that condition of approval, that will be a condition of approval.
1C3. 1C III, final landscaping plan include.
Your director's gonna disagree. Your director's gonna disagree. I would say just add a 7th condition.
Right.
And I would say we actually want this on the approved preliminary site plan that clearly says this area is set aside as that natural buffer area. So that it is part of the site plan itself. Please.
Any comments on staff's proposal?
Either way, you like, I'll make a motion and
Thank you.
and move that the planning commission recommend adoption of this of the staff proposal regarding approval of a conditional use permit and site plan for proposed use as an automotive and vehicle repair and maintenance shop. Provided that the staff recommendation be supplemented by the addition of a paragraph 7 stating that identifying the western portion of the site plan designate the area as a natural buffer area. Did that get? Motion? That was my motion.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're done.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. I'll read, we'll move forward with a vote, please.
Don DeZellem,
Yes.
George Jones.
Yes.
Ken Kennedy,
Yes.
Larry Larson,
Yes.
Sean Nielsen,
Yes.
Chair Hartsfield,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Brown.
Yes.
Okay.
So, looking forward to staff's recommendations on the architectural guidelines. As I know that was a major issue when we went through the Walmart project.
Okay.
At this point, we're going to see if we have some reports from staff before we move on to our work session.
Yeah, there's just one thing I wanted to update you all on, and that is related to the short-term rental ordinance. Back in July, this board had set forth a recommendation to City Council, and they did their first reading on that ordinance. I think it was July 7th. At that time, they chose to set the public hearing on that until October 5th. Since that time, there has been a petition from the citizens that have proposed their own ordinance. And at last week's city council meeting, they actually did approve a special election. So that citizen question will appear on the ballot for a special election here this fall. And then the city council also used the recommendation that came out of this committee as the basis for what's now known as Ordinance 1462. And that's an ordinance that will also appear on this ballot for the special election. They did make a couple of changes to that. And I'm not going to get them all right and summarized. There was definitely a definition that was added. Councilmember Neal is the one who had drafted and proposed all those. So I sorry, I don't.
I remember a few.
a distinct.
He
summary,
did
so
put specific caps in SR and UR zones of a percentage
1%.
of available lots, I believe is a percentage, 1%.
Thank you.
So that's a revision from ours.
There
An
was,
actual number, yeah.
there was some language in it which apparently wasn't finalized, and it sounded like they left to the city attorney to draft some of the wording that was in there. But, I mean, is it possible to get a copy of what it was the city council adopted? I wasn't totally
Yes.
clear on it. Is that?
Yeah, I don't have it handy at the moment, but we can get that distributed to you. Yes. Because it will be
But
definitely
everybody
distributed to
can't-
the community as a whole. And the election, the special election date is December 12th, and it's November 20th when those ballots start going out in the mail.
So this ballot will say, a petition has been submitted, do you approve of this petition? And if that's defeated, then it's the fallback, or how's it worded?
No, there's two independent questions. And this is, you're gonna go down a rabbit hole legally, so I can only go a teeny bit into that rabbit hole with you. Our city clerk is much more versed in this. But my understanding is if both of those questions are approved, the one that has the more yes votes is the one that carries. And then it gets further tricky because the citizens question only deals with Title 18. And city council's question deals with both Titles 5 and 18. So that's where it gets a little messier in terms of what happens. And I stay tuned.
Okay.
I've been working in local government for 20 years and, I've never seen this play out before. I've been through recalls of elected officials before, different code updates, different comp plans, but never down this nuance of Colorado law before. So I'm learning along with a lot of other people right now.
Okay, well, it's 8:37, and before we go into work session, we're gonna take a brief recess, take 10 minutes. Well,
Yeah, it's not gonna be a very long work session tonight, because I know you guys normally knock off about 9:30. But I do need to let some other folks that were gonna join us know that they can chime in now.
so let's reconvene at 8:47. Hey, it's 8:49. We're back in session.
And then, just so you know, online, we have our consultants, Jen Gardner and her associate Claire McWilliams. And then we also have Valerie Lundy and Rusty Neal in attendance. So I'm setting everybody up so that they can talk. So that should be good to go. So you folks out there just need to unmute themselves.
Okay, so we're into our work session for code review project. Aaron, do you have any direction to give us this evening?
I don't, other than we're continue to slowly make progress. We're into chapter 3. This is where we get into some of the review criteria and things that get applied to different projects. And you gotta remember, we're combining the subdivision and the zoning standards. They're part of the restructuring. So you're seeing things that come out of both of those different sets of rules. So there may be times where you're like, why is this here? And it's really that combination of stuff. And as you guys have been very aware, you really are our first blush through a lot of this. So you're seeing it in a pretty raw form. Not an optimal way to do this, but you guys are being amazing in terms of giving us feedback as we do plow through all of that. So just appreciate your time and commitment to the project. And I already had one of you catch me off to the side going, why is all the sign code stuff here with edits? I thought we weren't touching that. And that goes back to, if you recall, this is the first thing that was sent out, and we encountered sign stuff in another section. And that's where you guys very clearly told us we're not touching signs. Jen and I heard you loud and clear. So what you're seeing is just still that original set of stuff that went out. So that we heard you. Yeah, so just ignore that part for now.
We're talking about first blush, and we're giving you our first comments. we're gonna see a revised copy naturally,
Yes.
and plenty of time to digest that too.
Yeah, you know, and our goal is to have that pretty tight based on your feedback. Remembering this is largely a restructuring project. There are some things that are getting finessed just because we absolutely have to, but it really is about restructuring everything. And we've been identifying other items that we want to dive into in more detail in the future. There's one in this particular section that I'm going to highlight for you when we get to it. But otherwise, that's really where we are, is just getting things into a better format. And I'm hopeful that that gets adopted with fairly cleanly. And then from there, you know, there are things, like I said, we've identified that we need to go back in and review and dive into. But if we have a good format, it's a lot easier to clean some things up. You know, given our how important aesthetics are to this community, I've really come to the conclusion that a lot of our standards, I don't think really work for us the way that we would like. Get the feeling that we'd like to see things that are more firm, a little more robust. And that's a different kind of project to get that kind of stuff put into place. And that's not what we're doing at this point. But if we have a good structure, then we can go, okay, let's revisit what are the aesthetics in terms of what this stuff looks like. Do we beef up our landscaping standards? Do we have more specifics around what our buildings should look like? That, you know, it'd be a lot easier to go back in and clean up those specific sections where you're dealing with something definitive. So that's where we are, is the broad restructuring right now. And we're on chapter 3 of that proposed restructure. So with that, I guess we're on to Jen. You there? Hello? We heard you once.
There, Jen.
You're making a very weird noise.
You
guys hear me?
Yeah.
Now we can.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Are you gonna walk us through the process? Jen?
Yeah, I think we lost you again, Jen.
I tried to promote her to panelist, but that went sideways. I think we did lose her.
And Mr. Chairman, we are going to try to attempt to get out of here at 9:30.
That's the consensus I've been hearing, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I recognize this is not a long work session. I wasn't sure how long our hearing item was going to run. Yeah, I don't see her, CJ. I think we lost her.
I mentioned to Karen too that I won't be available on the 26th for the work session. And I don't know how many others will have that conflict or not be able to attend.
Should be here. I'm fine.
Okay. Continue on.
And you do have a heavy agenda for November 9th, just FYI.
Looks like Jen is online, but from my view, it does not look like she has the microphone connected, so we may have access to her.
Jen, do you have your microphone connected? CJ's not seeing that it is. Still can't hear you.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, I guess.
Right.
Is that a month?
I just sent her a chat. Oh.
Hey Karen, this is Rusty Neal. I just took it off mute just to do a test. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
We
got
can
you.
hear you. Fabulous.
Okay, then it is hers.
Yeah. And we haven't heard from Valerie, but I'm assuming she's.
Let's
just
give
fine
it
also.
5 minutes and see if we can get things reestablished.
Valerie's watching the Bronco game.
Yeah, we hear you, Valerie.
Is it still 16-0?
Oh, uh-oh, uh-oh.
What's he doing back there? What's on those screens?
Throw the game up there.
I was gonna say, CJ, could you put it up on the screen, please? We don't wanna watch it.
Defense actually showed up.
If we could just get both halves to show up at the same time,
No, we actually need to
Yeah.
go.
that's true.
The toxic relationship with the Bronco. You know, she was there through the entire public hearing.
Patiently waiting.
There's something there.
That's Claire I'm here.
it's-
That's what the screen that's
says
lighting up
zero.
is her associate, Claire.
Yeah, this is a,
Oh, you're not live.
I'm catching up.
No, no, we're just talking,
Don't know what you're talking about. What?
talking about the agenda, a couple of things.
Crowded around.
And we are recording this, by the way.
Just waiting for Jen.
Yikes.
If I'm miraculous,
Okay, back. So we can share the screen, we can,
oh,
for the discussion.
I think Claire needs to be a panelist as well to share her screen.
Well, we'll see if we can lose her. Here we go.
Okay. While we're waiting for Claire, I will say a few of you made comments in Conveo, and there wasn't anything out of the comments that was really earth-shattering. They were pretty standard, straightforward, easy to address comments, but there were a handful that I thought might be worth discussing as a group. So we can kind of go through each one by one like we've done in the past, just kind of acknowledge them and pause on the ones that I think we need to discuss in more detail.
Okay, Claire, you're a panelist, so you should be able to share your screen.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, the leak.
Oh, and guess what? Mine is working now.
Very good.
Well, and I see you as a panelist also, Jen, so one of you two should be able to share something.
Something. There we go.
Yay, we
Yes.
see you.
Okay, so we can see a screen that says chapter 3. And then there's a little bit of a mountain scene off to the right.
Which I can't read. Can anyone else read it?
The screen.
The right-hand side?
Oh,
list
the
of comments.
fine print under the
I can
comments,
see it.
yeah.
Can you read it?
Yeah,
Okay,
but I'm looking here.
let's see. Oh, okay, I get on. That's what we need to do.
I can see it because I'm closer. Barely read.
Yeah, I have a comment on line 1.
Are you ready, Jen?
Where it says chapter 3.
No, when these use regulations.
Okay. I have a comment on the first.
Oh, okay, you're ahead on the titles.
Yeah. title.
We ready to start discussion?
Yes.
Let's go ahead and start with Larry then.
I noticed that this topic deals with development standards, and I noticed that there were some use regulations that were embedded in this chapter, so we need to re-review this to make sure they're in the right place. That was my first comment. Second comment's dealing with change the intent and purpose to read purpose and intent and be consistent throughout, because it kind of goes back and forth. So we just need to be consistent in how we do that. And my next comment is probably the same one that Lee had, where these are not use regulations, these are just simply regulations.
Yeah, and to amplify that, the reason chapter 4 is titled use regulations. So to make it clear, I would just delete the word use and say the regulations in this chapter 3. They are what they are, as opposed to trying to find the right name for them. Yep.
Perfect. And this was a good catch. I believe, Larry, you caught it, that this whole section is embedded within the general provisions, but should be 3.02, starting a new section for soil erosion and sedimentation.
Yep, that's a separate topic. It's not a general.
Right.
And it kind of fits right there with signs and everything else.
Absolutely agree.
Needs to be at the same outline level.
Let's see. And then the same comment about purpose and intent. So this one doesn't have a purpose and intent. So
Yep.
Larry has proposed adding a purpose and intent, which I think is a great idea. And then, Larry, I believe this one was yours. I didn't put a name on this one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
add the words at the beginning of that sentence. So read, these development standard regulations shall apply.
and that works for me if everyone's good with that.
Yep.
Perfect. Then we go down to the next page. I think your suggestions on this are the cleanest, to say state of Colorado by statute and then conducted by the state of Colorado.
Exactly.
Recording in progress.
And then removing the word persons and changing to entities. I thought that was a great suggestion as well.
Well, that kind of brings up the question, who has the power of eminent domain? Is it strictly the city council?
Turn your speaker off.
You're like into a hardcore legal question there, Larry. And my understanding is it's the local government and it's the city council who ultimately makes those types of decisions on behalf of the local government.
Why do you think the word person was added there? Was that just
Which line are you on? I have a hard time seeing.
C3?
I have no idea. This is an old code with a lot to be desired.
Okay.
There's no person with the power of eminent domain. There's entities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. And that's what I wrote up there. You see on the screen.
Yes, I think entities would be appropriate, but I've made a note. We can ask legal that question to find out if we need to change that statement to be more specific. Then we have another state of Colorado. And then there was a suggestion just to remove this 6 items funded in whole or part by the state or the United States, to remove that one completely. What are our thoughts on that?
Waiting, it casts a fairly wide net without being clear.
Pretty broad, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
delete it.
And this section deals with, these are not exclusions from needing a permit. These are situations where you need one. Is that correct, Jen?
Yeah, let me reread this here. We're under soil erosion and sedimentation, land disturbing activity over which the state of Colorado by statute has exclusive regulatory jurisdiction.
Are they referring to public lands?
Well, there's nothing to refer.
Yeah.
I mean,
Stuff.
so many things are funded by the state and by the feds. I recommend it again, that just be deleted. That's just too
I was
ambiguous.
gonna say, when did that be covered under 1 and 2 up there anyhow?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd rather see conducted than funded.
Yeah. Cause if they're conducting them, they must be funding them.
Well, sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with that logic. We've already talked about conducted, and then at the end funded. So I'm okay with deleting if you guys agree.
Okay.
What about number 2, conducted by the United States?
Almost seems in conflict with C.
That's
where it's
kind of
over which the state by statute.
Mm-hmm.
So these are exclusions, so everybody needs to get a permit except for these folks for these purposes. So that one that says funded in whole or in part by the state of the United States.
I was looking at number 2.
Yeah, they're potentially trying to get away from like CDOT or Army Corps of Engineers, sometimes needing
State
someone.
funded schools
So,
may also be excluded.
yeah.
Take it out.
Let's make a note on this one in general, Jen, to have Nina give us some guidance on this. I guess I'm kind of curious if there's some other preemptions that we want to make sure are noted here.
That sounds good to me. And this language is, I think, rather old. I don't see this language in a lot of codes, and the state statute does already specify these different entities. So yeah, I think it's good to get Nina's reflection on this.
Unless we can find a sound rationale for something we said we're deleting the whole paragraph.
Yeah. Well, then,
Okay. Then our next comment is under general requirements. So we'll have to read this sentence here. Erosion control plan submission may be waived for land disturbing. It's worded very strangely, I'll put it that way. For land disturbing of less than 1 acre, but greater than 7,500 square feet by the City of Woodland Park Planning Department or its designee. And Larry suggested adding onto the end of that, if determined unwarranted or unnecessary.
Okay, this is a section where I need to chime in as the director because we run into issues in our world administering the code in terms of, and we're already shifting our terminology to help applicants understand the difference between a minor grading permit and a major grading permit. And it really is that square footage differentiation. So I think it's 1,500 square feet or less throws you into that minor category. And it's that greater than, and CJ, correct, is it greater than 1,500 to get you into a major grading permit? Or I can't remember.
So, yeah, anything over 1,500, anything from 0 to 1,500 is minor grading permit, which is now a multi-use zoning development permit. Anything from 1,500 to 7,500 is out, multi-use zoning development permit, which we now want to call minor grading. Anything over 7,500 is a grading permit, which we have. Yeah, we want a minor.
CJ, you say, you give those numbers, where are those numbers? How are those promulgated? Is that just administrative practice?
That's within the engineering study.
Yeah, so they partly show up in a totally different document. There's a little bit here in the code and trying to get all that stuff to sync and terminology to align. So I don't know if those folks in Zoom land heard that distinction. It was that 1,500 to 7,499 is the minor grading permit, and it's 7,500 square feet and greater that gets you into the major grading
Part of
permit.
Jim's comment was the fact that it's not very readable what's written. You might take the second sentence, if you don't want to list here because you've already doubling up the engineering standards, which those could change. Have start at the other end, the Woodland Park Planning Department or its designee may waive these requirements. Based upon city engineering standards, something of the sort like that. Now you don't have to try and explain it here and in the other place where they could diverge.
But it's generically open, so if it changes down the road, it's fluid still.
But as written, it's the wording is very poor, however.
If we could reference what the engineering standard is, it would be helpful to find out what those limits are. It's nice to have those numbers here so you can reference it. It's more user friendly. So at least have a reference to what the put those specific standards into the ordinance, or just what the engineering standard number, whatever.
Refer
Make a
to.
reference, refer to it.
Yeah.
And once again, those can update and revise, so that's why it's just the city engineering standards.
Well, that begs the
You know it's
question.
the right one.
You're right.
Karen or her designee will tell you it's the right one when you ask.
Right. But at least if I agree though, because if you can at least say reference here, rather than actually putting the standard in.
That would be better than the
Right.
unintentional word in this here.
Right, right, that helps at least.
If we're not gonna put the numbers in this paragraph, we should make a reference to where we can find those, just to be user
to help,
friendly.
Yeah. Because otherwise, whomever is gonna be changing.
Your attorney's
the
gonna
time
get
it's changing.
straight.
Yeah.
And I know you,
I'd rather, my preference would be to leave what the planning department, handle. Give them authority to look at the engineering standards.
That's Karen.
Okay, so Jen, I assume you have like a general, I've seen you highlighted some stuff and a general note in there that we need to dive into this one a little more deep to come up with a way to make sure that we don't create conflicts with engineering standards, but have a clear boundaries for when permits are required, since that's really part of the key of this particular document is you need permits for X. And then that engineering standards are, this is as part of doing the construction, what the standard that needs to be met.
Well, what if we just said minor grading plans can be waived at the staff's discretion?
if warranted.
Yeah. But like I said, needing to make sure we add in that clear major versus minor type of permit.
Here's a very general question. If we have engineering standards dealing with soil erosion and sedimentation, why do we also have them in our zoning regulation?
Because they came out of the subdivision regulations. This is,
Oh,
that's where they were. And remember, this is that merging of subdivision and zoning, the restructuring that you're seeing happen here.
Okay, so you would recommend continue to have those in there?
I've not had a chance to think about that.
Okay.
I got nothing.
Okay.
No, I appreciate you
I can
asking.
understand that.
So.
Okay.
What comes next? There, Jen, we're not hearing you.
Hello.
Hello, Jen?
She's still sharing her screen though, right?
Can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. Gosh, my Zoom is just so slow this evening.
Okay, so,
Now I can hear again. Sorry, I lost my audio for a second there. Okay. Sorry, Karen, go ahead if you were.
we're waiting on you, actually, so we finished that other section, so.
So now we are on basic control objectives. And the comment is determine whether it should be identified as an erosion control or an erosion control and sedimentation control plan, not both. And I think that's a good distinction between the two.
Yeah, because we use both throughout this section. We should be consistent.
And that may be a more general comment at the start of this section, because I think this actually does both erosion and sedimentation control. So that may be like in that purpose statement that, you know, these then apply to both of those, and then you don't have to repeat it quite so much through the remainder of it.
That's a good.
Just be consistent.
Yeah.
Okay. The next comment was, this one was one I wanted to discuss. Excuse me. Mandatory standards for land disturbing activity, graded slopes and fills. The angle for graded slopes and fills shall be no greater than the angle which can be retained by vegetative cover or other adequate erosion control devices or structures. And I believe it was Ken and Kennedy that had mentioned, do we want to specify?
Yeah, so if you look at slopes, 3-to-1 is mowable, 2-to-1 is what vegetation cover can live on if you do the search. So, but why leave it up to a search and what one person finds versus another to argue about it? Shouldn't we just say 2-to-1 or decide? Because we specify slopes elsewhere, I would think. So I just thought that's pretty random and you have to look it up. It doesn't really tell you, well, you know, what's the slope for vegetative cover? You research it, it says 2-to-1. Typical in civil engineering stuff. So it just made sense to say 2-to-1.
Inevitably, that would be one weird that this person.
I don't know. We're trying to make this easier for people.
I agree.
And I don't know what the intent was. I just assume it was 2-to-1.
Not necessarily. And I can't answer the intent because of how old this potentially is. My thought is to touch base with our city engineer around modern practices and what that potentially gets looked at or how it's viewed. Because I know like with stormwater and detention ponds, there's the whole 3-to-1 versus 4-to-1 that starts to happen. So I'm a little concerned about specifying a number here because it may vary depending upon what the application is or the situation.
That's fine.
So
it was just a thought.
Yeah.
I would agree with Ken that it would be nice to get a number in here or reference some engineering.
I was only
standards.
referencing the or for
Yeah.
vegetative cover, not the other two, the or other adequate erosion control devices. That's where it gets more subjective. I was just specifically the vegetative cover.
Now, it brings up a good point because we talked a little bit about this earlier. And we talked about, well, have a reference to the city engineering specifications because they may change from time to time. At the same time, it would certainly help clarify our code by having that specific requirement stated right here without having to go to some other resource to find it. So there's kind of a balance we have to try to meet there. Because you want somebody, if they say, okay, I think I have to do a soil erosion and sedimentation control plan. Well, what's that involved? Well, you want to have it right here.
It sounds like we need to do a little more digging with the city engineer, maybe?
I think so.
Okay.
It's fine.
We have 6 minutes.
6 minutes before we turn into pumpkins. All right. Oh, I totally agree. Ken, you said that this seemed to be an incomplete thought. Are we wanting to say that the velocity of storm runoff is not increased after development?
I mean, the sentence didn't make sense by itself the way I read it.
Right. I agree. It felt like something was missing. So we might have to read it within the context of where it is and
Let me read it to everybody else and they can explain it to me. The land disturbing activities shall be planned and conducted such that the velocity of stormwater. You got the
runoff. It says
runoff, run in the,
runoff in the
the
receiving.
velocity of stormwater run in the receiving water course at the point of discharge resulting from a 5-year storm after development.
Yeah,
It's like, where's the verb? Or the distinction? It just doesn't say anything. That's why I said it must mean that the velocity of stormwater runoff is not increased in the receiving water course at the point of discharge resulting from 5-year storm event after development, or something like that. I just want to point out the sentence didn't say anything without some additional words. And you guys figure out which the right words are.
Thanks for flagging that. That was good.
Yeah, and the previous statement is talking about increased velocity from runoff, so I think we can interpolate what we're trying to say here. But that was a good one. All right. Now we have borrow and waste areas. What if the borrow or waste area is not in the jurisdiction of the city? So the statement is when the person conducting the land disturbing activity is also the person conducting the borrow and waste disposal activity. Areas from which borrow is obtained shall be considered as part of the land disturbing activity where the borrow material is being used or from which the waste material originated. So that's a little bit bigger question, but what if the borrow or waste are not in the jurisdiction of the city?
Yeah, so if you're borrowing from someplace outside the city, it doesn't apply, right?
Jurisdiction.
Because we don't have jurisdiction. It's only if the borrow or the waste area is within the same jurisdiction in the city. So I thought,
Rewrite that first sentence into 2 sentences. It might not be so confusing.
Yeah, and after when the person conducting the land disturbing activity is also the person. Wait, never mind. I have to read that again.
we hire a civil engineer. We had to waste soil and rock and stuff off the site, and they hauled it off.
Mm-hmm.
They wasted it, but it wasn't in the city. Might have been in this county, but we don't really know where. But we would assume that the permit covered all the activity, but if they took it to the next county, which could have been 2 miles away, how does it fall under the permit? You don't have jurisdiction there, so I don't know. It didn't make sense to me. It does for if it's within the city limits or within the same jurisdiction, but otherwise it seems like that would be pointless to say. So
Or if we could simplify this whole thing and just say what you just said. If the borrow and waste are taking place within the same jurisdiction, then one permit could apply to both. Versus if you're
probably so. That
borrow
sounds
and
like the
waste
right way to do it.
Within the city of Woodland Park. Not the same jurisdiction.
well, because now they're saying this last sentence is if they're in 2 separate places or being done by 2 different people, that they should be considered separate land disturbing activities, which whether it was within the city or not, if one person was dealing with the borrow and another person was dealing with the waste, I guess it could end up being 2 land disturbing activity permits, is what I think this is trying to say.
Personally, I have no idea what it's trying to say. It's way too confusing. Long as that-
All right, but Jen, you've got it clearly noted that we need to dive into that one and
Yes.
sort it out and the objective is to make it clear, and it's obviously falling short. In terms of what permits are required by who and when.
And where?
Yeah,
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit of that in this chapter. So, and I think you guys flagged a lot of them. But yeah,
As Larry doesn't have to remind us, it's now 9:30. Unless there's any further comments on borrow and waste areas,
She's already scrolled down to purpose and objectives.
I think
Okay,
it's,
where did can we, is there anything else related to borrow and waste, or where are we in the, I'm trying to get to
I think our next spot would be a good stopping point because it starts to get into grading regulations.
Purpose and objectives, I think I saw the yellow box. Book one. Oh, okay, I guess what I saw.
I thought I saw it too, but
Yeah.
After borrow waste, and then
yeah.
it would be this whole next section was the next comment.
so it takes us to the top of page 7 for our next work session. Grading and regulations. So any last comments before we adjourn? Thank you for all your efforts. It's 9:31. Sorry, Larry, meeting's adjourned.